Hello and welcome to episode 5 of the Long Shot Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Duncan Robinson, and I'm here with my well-renowned co-host, Davis Patrick Reid. Davis, how are we doing today?
I'm great. Well-renowned is an incredible compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I've gotten some feedback that we need to compliment each other less, so we can move forward from that. The Super Bowl has commenced, and it was a tough one for your Kansas City Chiefs, to say the least.
So this is where we're going to start. Yeah, it was a tough one. So here's how I've come to rationalize it. It's a lesson in sports psychology. That's my takeaway from the game, because the Bucs just looked and felt like they really believed they were going to win that game. And that's the impact of Tom Brady. As soon as Tom Brady enters your locker room, everyone in that organization believes that you can win a Super Bowl, and they just went out and they got it done. They were the better team. Not much else to say. The Chiefs didn't deserve to win. We were battered and bruised, and didn't perform.
So I actually didn't really even get to catch the game. We were flying back from New York, so missed basically the first 3 quarters, which, as many know, by that point the game was pretty much over. But what my night did consist of was checking the score on the plane's Wi-Fi, and then also periodically checking in with you and making sure that you were in good spirits, considering just how things were going, because it got pretty dark there for a sec.
Your phone calls are, I think, meant to be supportive, but weren't really helping. I was in a dark place. I appreciate you trying, though. I think that's what matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, there's something obnoxious about Chiefs fans. I don't know if it's just that you guys are like such a high-powered offense, but it's just like, you're down in a game and it's like just the arrogance to just know that you're going to come back. And I think it was the same this game. Everyone was sitting, waiting around. Oh no, the Chiefs are going to make a run. The Chiefs are going to make a run. And it just never happened.
It felt different this time. It did. It felt different. Mahomes was just running for his life the entire game. We didn't score a touchdown. So what else can you say? You can't win the Super Bowl if you're not going to score a touchdown, let alone if you're going up against Brady. So tip your cap to him. He's great, obviously. It is what it is. We move on. We move forward. I saw that the odds for Super Bowl 22 just came out, and the Chiefs are favored, which, I guess is exciting. So here we go. Road to 2022 Super Bowl champs.
If that helps you sleep at night, then please lean into that fully. I think you're spot on in that it's so interesting, Brady, in that it's not like he's this physically dominant player, and it's not like he's putting up crazy numbers either. I mean, there are multiple quarterbacks in the NFL that have better seasons than him, but you talk about somebody moving the needle from a competitive standpoint. He just amplifies the locker room and instills confidence across everybody to the point where you just feel like you have a chance. I'm sure if he's in your locker room. I mean, I've experienced it to an extent with Jimmy. When he's in our locker room, particularly in the playoffs, when he's in our locker room, everyone's looking around like we got a chance because we got that guy. So I can relate to that to some extent, but you're talking about the greatest of all time. I think it's undisputed at this point. So the level in which he does that is incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. Again, just the power of believing that you can win, which is special. Here's a segue for you, believing you can win. The Miami Heat are coming off their first back-to-back series sweep of the season. So we're recording this on Wednesday. You guys yesterday just beat the Knicks twice for your first sweep of the season. How's that feel? Also, I'm curious with the new schedule in the NBA, you guys are playing these back-to-back like little mini series. What is that like? Like, are you making adjustments, I assume, after game one, after night one? Does it feel like a very light version of a playoff series, like a little mini playoff series?
Yeah, there's definitely shades of playoffs. I will say last night in particular felt like a playoff game. With only 2,000 people in American Airlines, the intensity was real. Once you get to the 7th consecutive quarter of playing against each other, you're very familiar with what your opponent is going to do. And as you referenced with a playoff series, adjustments become key. How you win game one in that little mini series is not going to necessarily how you win game 2. In fact, you're going to have to find a different way to win, because especially, two really good coaches, there's going to be adjustments and nobody's going to get beat the same way twice. So yeah, it was definitely good to get those two. Playing in the Garden without fans is surreal, just kind of weird, eerie feeling. But nonetheless, it's still the Mecca, so it's fun to be there. And also, as always, it's great to get a win there.
So you guys played them on Sunday, and then again on Tuesday. And Tuesday they had D Rose, so the D Rose trade happened right after you guys played him the first time. I went and looked at his stats. You forget that guy is still an incredibly good basketball player. He's averaged 18 a game over the last 2 years, shooting over 50% from the field. What was it like? You guys played him earlier this year in Detroit, but he was great yesterday.
He just sees, he's such a veteran, has seen so much and has seen so many different defenses, and just has an understanding of how to be effective. Obviously he doesn't have the explosiveness that he once had, in his MVP season before maybe some of the injuries, but make no mistake, he is a really, really good basketball player still. And we obviously saw it last night. He was a huge spark for them off the bench, and just made it really, really tough on us. I think, they were certainly, it seemed a better, more well-functioning team with him on the floor, just in my opinion, or at least that's what it felt like. So, it's always surreal for me to be playing against guys like that I grew up watching mixtapes of and highlights of and all sorts of different stuff. So yeah, it's I'm happy for him that he's in a new situation, or at least I'm assuming that he's excited about that. So definitely happy for him.
Didn't you tell him earlier this year that you grew up watching his mixtapes? Did that happen on court? I think you've told me a story like that.
Yeah, this was when he was with Detroit still. I got caught on a switch with him, and he went to his kind of like in and out pull up or whatever. And I got to stop. I blocked it partially. Whoa. Yeah, we secured the ball and went the other way. And there was a dead ball, a free throw. We were at the line, and he came up to me and he was like, "Man, Duncan, you must have been watching all my game film. You know my moves." And I just kind of laughed. I was like, "Man, I've been watching your game film and your highlights well before this year, man. Like I grew up watching that." And he just had this moment. He was like, "Man, that's crazy, man." And he said to me, he's like, "I'm a huge fan of your game." And I was like, "Damn, that's crazy." I was like, no. I'm a fan of your game. There was just kind of like this little moment, the game within the game of like, that's crazy. Like Derrick Rose, former youngest MVP ever, like, all the accolades. It was just like, wow, it was definitely kind of that like aha moment for me. I've had a bunch of them in my career, but it was definitely one of them.
Yeah, that's special. I want to ask you about a text you sent in our group chat a couple of days ago.
Oh, wow. We're taking private things public, it seems.
Yeah. Because I think it's really interesting. I do. I think it's a genuine, honest comment that I think is fascinating to hear from a guy like you. You texted us after a game where you didn't shoot it like you wanted to, and you texted us and said, "My shot feels so good right now. I would have guessed all of those were going in." You were like, "It's just a matter of time before these start falling," which I think is really interesting and really powerful for you to have that mindset and confidence moving forward. Because, to be completely frank, you haven't really had a slump in your career up to this point. And right now you're going through a little bit of one. And so for you to have that mindset where you're texting your friends afterwards, like, "Hey guys, my shot still feels really good." I just think, and especially a guy like you who you function on high confidence, right? So I don't know, when I read that text, I was like, I felt good about it. I wanted to get your take on that and what you mean when you say, "Man, my shot feels so good right now," and then what it's like to deal with when it does feel good, but maybe you're not seeing the result that you expect.
Yeah, the psychology of shooting is something that still fascinates me. Just because I think the game you're talking about, I think it was New York, recently, where I went. I think I went 4 for 10 from three, which is 40% at high volume, which is considered 40% three from three is high level. You're right in that I'm incredibly hard on myself in general, but it's not where I want to be. But it's also like, shooting is it's so delicate in that if one of those goes in, one more of those goes in, and a variety of them felt great, like you said, coming off my hand, all of a sudden I'm 5 of 10 or 6 of 10 if 2 of them go. And that goes from oh gosh, I couldn't make a shot tonight to that's a high level shooting game, 5 of 10, 6 of 10 from three. So it's so delicate. And you're right. This is a stretch right now that I'm going through really for the first time in my career, or my professional career, I should say, where I'm having difficulty, whatever it is, catching a rhythm. The ball is just not going through at the rate that I'm used to, or I've grown accustomed to. So it's a big part of it with me is just continuing to take the right shots. And it's not like anything feels off or feels different, as weird as that may sound, because I could go 7 for 10 or 2 for 10 and I'm shooting all the right shots. A lot of the shots feel the exact same. And there's not this, great discrepancy between the actual shots themselves. So you try not to get caught up in the results. And that's an incredibly hard thing to do when your profession is so result driven, in that oftentimes people are judged off of box scores and statistics, and saying that you can just turn a blind eye to those things is unrealistic. So that's like the internal battle that I think everyone deals with, but particularly right now, I'm certainly dealing with. I try not to be just a percentage watcher where I'm just obsessed with my percentage, but instead making sure I'm doing the right things to generate good shots and just take good shots within our offense. And, I feel like I've been doing that. And, I'm a strong believer in just keep the work the same, keep the habits the same, and eventually, water will find its level. So, yeah, I appreciate you bringing up the fact that I haven't been shooting it great. But, you're right in that it's a reality. So it also doesn't make any sense to act like everything's normal and act like I'm, shooting it great when I'm not. That's just kind of not living in reality. So it's just all about being persistent. I'm going to continue to put in the work that I put in, on non-game days and before games and all that sort of stuff. And from there, control what you can control and live with the results.
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, you're welcome for bringing that up. I'm sure that's something you really wanted to talk about. But water always finds its level. I think that's an incredible quote, first of all, but an incredible mindset. And you've talked about this before, and like you just said, it's about attempts. And so I think when you think of it that way, it's easier to just keep it pushing and keep it moving. So the other thing I wanted to ask you about is they being the NBA, have recently made it sound like the AllStar Weekend is happening. So I know last episode we talked about how it was trending that direction. It now seems like it's pretty much a done deal. And some of the biggest guys in the league have come out and not so subtly spoken out against it, thinking it's a bad idea, whether it's because of load management or safety with COVID. I'm just curious what your take on that is when you have some of your leaders in the league coming out against it. Is it almost like, do you feel the need to jump on board and join them? Or are you just sort of watching from afar, like, all right, well, we'll see what happens?
Watching from afar. In terms of this conversation, my opinion and point of view is generally irrelevant. Nobody's taking it into consideration. But I do think that those guys, the year in, year out All-Stars, they do actually have the power to potentially move the needle with this type of stuff. So I think I understand where they're coming from. I think that from what I've gathered, the frustration comes from the fact that it was talked about and discussed that there wouldn't be one. And now this seems to be kind of thrown onto guys. So, I think both sides have a point, and I'm not trying to play too much of the middle here, but I totally understand why players feel the way they do. But I actually want to transition to another form of high-level basketball content. There had been some requests on YouTube, I believe, some in the comments, looking for a Davis Reid high school highlight tape. And I just want to publicly address that those requests have been heard and we have something on the way. And I just want everybody to stay tuned on our YouTube channel for some Davis Reid high school highlights. And let me tell you, you're in for a treat. It is a high level of basketball. I liken him to a lefty Steve Nash, floor general, really sees the floor, dynamic with the ball in his hands, can hurt you in a variety of ways. But I think that all of those comments will really come to life when you get to experience the highlight tape, because it is something special. We're in the process of figuring out a soundtrack. I'm a strong advocate for Bow Wow, what's it called? Basketball by Bow Wow.
Yes.
So that's what I want to be the track. But yeah, stay tuned.
I have so many things to say. First of all, you are really building up anticipation for something that I'm not even sure you've seen. I think you've seen clips. I don't know if you've seen the whole mixtape. Secondly, you bring up Like Mike. I just want to quickly mention, I flipped by Like Mike 2 the other day on TV, and it is so bad, with all due respect, because the first one is
I didn't even know they had a second one.
Oh my God. The first one is the legendary movie, iconic movie.
Oh, yeah.
The second one was just so disappointing. This is also me getting away from my high school.
Yeah,
highlight.
well, I was just going to say, I haven't seen the entire tape put together, but I know your game. So let's not, let that get misconstrued. I know your game and I know what you bring to the table. So yeah, I think everybody will be excited for that. Let's move on here to the Reddit question of the day. Davis, what do you got?
This one is special. This one is really, really special because I was flipping through Reddit the other day and came across a post on Reddit's community that was addressed to you. Which, you know what this means? It means we're having an impact
on making waves,
which was the goal all along. Like, it feels like we're becoming part of the community. Which, how great is that? So user Hoko Mojo posted Duncan. This is how he starts his post. Duncan, comma.
So he just addresses me.
He's asking you. I suppose he could be talking to another Duncan, but we have to assume that he's asking you.
Well, the beautiful thing is it's now made its way to me.
100%.
So Hoka Mojo, your voice has been heard. What's his question?
He asks, and again, it begins, Duncan, are there any shooters arenas in the NBA? What's the hardest gym to shoot in, and what's the easiest?
Hoka Mojo, that's a good question. I will say the NBA is a little bit different than college in the sense that in college, you don't really know what you're going to get because not everything is uniform. Different venues, different schools might have different deals with, certain companies. So the backboards might be different, or the rims might be different, or the layout of the facility might be different. There isn't a stanchion, but it comes down from the ceiling, like at Duke. It's just different across the board. The NBA, everything is pretty much the same. We're all working with the same rims. We're all working, everything has a stanchion. The backdrops are different. You could make an argument that some backdrops are more friendly for shooting than others. Some backdrops go deeper. Some are a little bit more tight. Like Minnesota has a tight backdrop relative to a lot of these other places. I would say, obviously I'm somewhat partial and biased to Miami, but I'm most comfortable shooting in our home arena for a variety of reasons, mostly just because I have the most reps there and I've put in time there. So I would say that is the best shooting arena. But I've also heard that teams that come in really like shooting on those rims in American Airlines. So I would say that that's up there for sure. In terms of the worst, I don't know if I can think of one off top. I would probably just pick whatever place I have the worst numbers, which I can't really think of off the top of my head. I will say, I think that MSG's rims are a little bit tighter than normal. Maybe it's probably completely made up and not real and has no legitimacy to it, but it's my own experience and I'm sticking to it and calling it a fact.
What about Staples? Particularly the Lakers when they're playing there, because they pump that fog.
Yes.
Is that weird?
That's the only thing. So Staples and MSG both, they do funky things with lighting. So it's a little bit different in those two venues because they do different stuff with lighting. Like you said, they have the fog, particularly in Staples. And actually, I think Brooklyn does that now too. I don't know if they kind of bigger senior venues, so maybe it's kind of, they want to treat it like a stage. A lot of other venues, it doesn't really feel like that though. So maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. For example, Staples, I only play there twice a year when it's Lakers and Clippers, so I'm not super familiar with it, but it's definitely something that I've kind of come to notice there.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, you want to hit the long shot feature this week?
Yeah, actually, we can do this one together. This can kind of be a group effort. The long shot feature this week is an athlete similar to the two of us.
You.
It is Kayleigh Skopal. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Kayleigh Skopal, the captain of the North Texas volleyball team. And I'm hearing that she is just a hit amongst her teammates, fan favorite to many, and just people speak very highly about her leadership, selflessness, toughness. So back in 2019, they're on a road trip to the great state of Florida. And she starts to have these headaches, migraines, and it gets to the point, it gets pretty bad. She can't even walk on her own volition. And she's admitted to the hospital, treated for the migraines, and sent home. A couple of days later, the symptoms come back, and she's losing motor function, eyes, hands, couldn't even tie her shoes, is what she told us. And she actually ends up being diagnosed with Guillain-Barré, which is an autoimmune disease, I believe, Davis. You're the health expert here. Do you want to dive into that one a little more?
Yeah. So Guillain-Barré, basically your body starts fighting. It turns on yourself. So your immune system is being attacked. Your nervous system is being attacked. And so what it does is it hinders the ability basically for your brain to send messages to the rest of your body. It attacks your myelin sheath on your neurons, which is how your brain sends messages to the rest of your body. So like you said, she's unable to open her hands. She's unable to tie her shoes. Terrifying, really a terrifying disease. I watched some videos talking about her and her story, and just want to quickly shout out her mom because her mom has a medical background, and so she actually explains the disease, and it seems like there's no one better to be in her corner than her mom when she's going through this. But yeah, so she's going through GBS, Guillain-Barré syndrome, admitted back to the hospital, goes through a ton of treatment, rehab, literally has to relearn how to stand up, how to walk, how to tie her shoes, how to open her hands, which is, just imagine what that is like. It's impossible to imagine what that is like. But
I hear she's back on the court.
Back on the court.
And the North Texas Mean Green, I believe.
Yeah.
Their season started last week.
Yeah.
A little later than, scheduled programming, but, COVID and everything going on, very understandable. But she's playing, and she's their setter. And she is the glue that's keeping it all together over there in North Texas.
Think about how much hand-eye coordination goes into setting.
Yeah.
Like, this woman was teaching herself how to tie her shoes, retie her shoes last year.
That's incredible.
And now she's setting in playing college volleyball. That's just remarkable. I think it's a remarkable story.
No, it absolutely is. So shout out to Kayleigh, who is as we mentioned, our long shot feature this week. The perseverance to stick with it and not only get back to being able to function day in and day out, but to get back to competing at such a high level. So yeah, shout out to Kayleigh. I also want to just mix in there. Davis sounded very at home when he was describing, the neural functions and all these different things. Davis has been waiting for me to plug to everybody. He wants everybody to know that he was, in fact, a neuroscience major in college. So you're going to see his abilities on the court, but what only surpasses those is his abilities in the classroom, in that he is was a neuroscience major. I guess you've graduated with a neuroscience degree. So I said we weren't going to compliment each other, but for some reason here I am just complimenting you.
Love it.
But yeah, so that's pretty much what we got for the little front of show here. We got a really great conversation coming up with both of our good friend George and Yang, which I think you guys will all enjoy.
One word to describe combo with George.
I'm going to go 2, which is probably breaking the rules on that one.
It is.
But I'm going to say insightful and nostalgic. I think there's shades of both. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. We certainly had a good time, chopping it up with him.